Whenever I walk through the halls or go to class in the theater, build the new set, my mind rushes to the next show. Happens. With that brings the stress and excitement, and I begin to think back on last year's musical. All of the work building, painting, and running scenery, waiting to hear if they liked us or not, and the joy of turning 5 shows into 7, bringing me back to the story of Shrek the Musical. The process began in September. The design was difficult than anything before. 3 castles, a barn, and a tree stump. But the best person with tools was gone and graduated. With the resident handyman gone, the responsibility slowly but surely fell to me. New stress working drills and jigsaws by myself, strange layouts and techniques presented itself, in the form of 5 mini-stages to compile into one scenery. All hard to handle, but I adjusted. The task was not easy, but doable. By the end of October, the stage was set, and with everything up, the magic could begin. November arrived, and it was now time to work behind the stage. But this time was unique. It was time for me to go on stage. They told the crew about our costume, which left us in awe. Painted purple and pink, we saw a dragon made of foam and chicken wire. The director told us it was our job to dance in it. I learned the blocking and choreography, and the crew was stage ready in no time. Quick changes and maneuvering backstage was hard, but I managed, and everything fell into place. But alas, the show had to close and call it a wrap. Or so the cast and crew thought. Monday morning, over a week after the show closed, everyone involved met in the theater to hear the news. You see, on closing night, we had some guests. These guests were there to judge the performance, to determine whether or not we were good enough to perform at the Illinois State Theater Festival in January. Everyone prepared for the worst. The theater director acted like he had to tell us the worst. But he announced the best. After the winter one act came and went, he announced January the room erupted. We had one last rehearsal once school started again. Then, we were to load everything onto the truck on Wednesday. But cold weather prevented us from getting it done. Loading the set, costumes, and props took us the entire next morning. Covered in snow and shuffling in slippery metal left me close to frozen solid. But I knew it had to be done, and it was my job to do it. School closings were holding us back, but Shrek the Musical hit the road Thursday afternoon. The drive to Urbana Champaign took 4 hours. One showing of Rents and a good nap later, I could get off the bus and check into the hotel. We couldn't stay and relax in the rooms just yet, and not only because my room needed more beds for me and my roommates. This was just the start of a busy weekend. That weekend began with the IHSTF opener On the Fly, a fly show if you couldn't tell from the capitalization. The show was incredible, with people soaring through the air. The hour-long show told the story throughout, with its use of curtains and rings, along with the occasional sword fight. That show helped me get me into the right mindset for the rest of the festivities and everything that had to get done. Well, certainly more than sleeping on the chair. The next morning is when me and everybody else started to have a busy schedule. At breakfast, everyone chose their tickets. We only had a couple for each show, so going first was important. Juniors picked second, so I still managed to grab the ticket to the show I wanted. Get Your Act Together. It was a collection of one-act plays from Clinton High School, one of which was called Tracks. And I knew the moment I saw it that I wanted to do it for the one act this December. Shameless plug. My friend Alvaro still had to wait. Our theater was still being used until noon for Next to Normal. Once they were out of the theater, the real work could begin. The curtain rose at 3, meaning the stage had to be ready by 2:30 at the latest. The trucks only took around half an hour to unload, but that still left set crew with only 2 hours to get the stage done. This particular stage was almost twice as wide as our Bob Newhart stage, so I had to make some serious adjustments. In addition to putting all the pieces back together, the stage took nearly 4 hours at our stage. With about a dozen people, we had to do this in half the time, with only 6 people, not including festival staff. Those hours pushed me as far as I could handle, but that stage had to be finished by showtime, so it did. Just like everyone else, I was in a frenzy by the time 2:45 rolled around. The gap between shows started on November 16th and finally ended on January 9th. It had been 54 days since we ran Shrek in front of an audience. In those 54 days, the cast ran their songs and lines once. The crew hadn't even practiced their cues at all in those 54 days. The nerves were unbearable. I kept worrying something would go wrong, but it was time to bring everything together again for our 6th show. No one could control everything, so the best I could do was make the dragon look perfect. Once it was time for the dragon to make its first appearance, I could tell this was different. This audience had an entirely different makeup than Ignatius. Theater Festival was closed off only to people involved in theater. That meant that around half the audience were other people working crews. Kids who could truly appreciate what goes on backstage, because there are another shows backstage. Once I poked the dragon's massive head through the curtain, the crowd roared. Having the audience applaud as loudly as they were for what something I was doing was surreal. There were a few hiccups here and there, but the show still looked amazing. Alright, everybody ready for the 7 o'clock? First show ended around 5, leaving me and everyone else 2 hours of downtime. Downtime for redoing makeup and costumes for the top of the show, bringing props and set pieces back to where they should be for the 7th show, and most importantly, pizza. What happened during that break was more important than pizza. Someone came by to give us an award. That award meant a lot to us. Before we left, we had a joke. Theater Fest wasn't a competition, but we're gonna win. So, that Best Show award validated that. Once our break was over, we performed the 7th and last show without a hitch. It was a little heartbreaking, but part of me felt relieved. Relieved that now is finally time to put this show to rest and start the next one. Although the crew wanted to do something a little unique for the 7th show. Shrek the Musical ends with a song called I'm a Believer. That song was too fun for us not to do something exciting, so the entirety of backstage basically decided to rush the crowd. I ran through the aisles high-fiving everyone that I physically could. I like to think that this is one of the most exciting moments of my life. Once the last show had wrapped, it was time to take down the stage. Now, there was a dance about an hour after we finished, so I have never seen members of the cast work that efficiently in my life. Seriously, we finished reloading everything into the truck in an hour, which was followed by 20-something running children to a party. We danced and had some fun, which felt great after constructing a stage and doing 2 shows in less than 10 hours. Yeah, that day pushed us to our breaking point. I had to dig into every reserve I had to continue, making the moment where I could finally use the end of my energy on doing the Cupid Shuffle incredibly sweet. With our big day over, it was finally time for the closer. We woke up, ready to see the all-state performance of Pippin. The show was great, but it mostly felt nice just to watch a show. Then it was time to head back home and start Pride and Prejudice. Nearly 10 months later, and with this show's festival on the horizon, being part of the show is still fresh in my mind. We performed for around 3,000 people in just over 6 hours. Since then, I've been on stage and in charge backstage, but those 2 shows downstate are unparalleled. I feel like those shows helped me break out of my shell just a little bit more. All I needed was a spark to ignite the passion within. The rest of Harlequins hold Shrek close to our hearts because, after all, it's never truly Ogre.